Welcome to Going Off Subject, a Jones College radio and TV production in association with Free State Records. I am your host, Ollie Hammonds, helping cast my bronze voice over your speakers. In studio today with me is the great one, the great producer, Matt McGuffey. Our special guest in studio today with me is head Jones College baseball coach, Coach Wes Thigpen. Coach Wes, thank you so much for coming in today.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me. Glad we got to connect and get this thing going.
Oh, yeah. So, first question we always ask really is just to get a little bit of background on you. Where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like? What sports did you play? And what ultimately drew you to the sport that you coach now?
Yeah, for sure. Grew up in South Louisiana, small town called Luling, probably right between Houma and New Orleans. Down the bayou a little bit, but not too far. Had a great childhood. Grew up and, had both parents, fortunately. Grew up playing baseball. Played a little soccer. Really wasn't for me. I guess it was too boring. Kind of didn't stick to it too much. The cold weather, the rain just wasn't for me. And didn't play football until I was really in junior high. Kind of was sitting at the school bus stop the day of tryouts, and my two buddies were going out, and they convinced me to go out and try out as well. We all made it, and I was the only one that ended up playing in high school. But they had played their whole lives growing up, and I know that football kind of shaped me into who I am today as well, just with toughness and grit and discipline. It had a lot to do with it. But before that, it was a lot of baseball. Growing up, just having fallen in love with the game, and really didn't come from a family full of athletes. My dad played football growing up, but he's from small town Georgia, a little town called Soperton, which is you blink, you pass it, you're not gonna know you were there. But he did play football, and I think that's where I got some of that grit and that toughness instilled in me was them. But had some hard-nosed, disciplined parents for sure. Weren't necessarily hard on me, but I just saw their discipline and how they went about their day and how they did their things, and how they got up early every morning and did whatever they had to do to provide for us. And had a very, very good childhood, very good family. Ended up playing high school baseball. Had the opportunity. Actually committed to LSU out of high school. And you see it more so nowadays than you did before, but they changed coaching staffs, and that's when Paul Maneri was coming in. And I was one of the ones that got dumped and kind of got a little chip on my shoulder. Had some opportunities to go to smaller D1s in Louisiana, and just really felt like I wanted to see more, and ended up going to Meridian Community College for 2 years and enjoyed my time there. And that's when I really got introduced to the junior college system of Mississippi, because Louisiana doesn't have that. They have about 13 to 15 Division I schools. There's really 3 junior colleges, and if you were where I'm from, there was one junior college option, and that was Delgado. And a lot of people aspire to kind of go other places. Delgado's an incredible program, but wanted to get away from home a little bit and kind of grow on my own, and get away from having everything provided for me at home, and really grow and have to do those things. And went to Meridian and really did those, and had the opportunity to go and get 200 at bats a year, catch every inning in 2 years over there, and really enjoyed my time. And then had the opportunity to go to Mississippi State, and it was a no-brainer. Not even really growing up a Bulldog fan. Obviously grew up an LSU fan from South Louisiana, but that has quickly changed for us and my family. But really enjoyed my time there as well. I really learned a lot, and then jump to the SEC was huge. And after playing, I was like, it was a great thing I went to junior college. I wasn't ready. Every high school kid thinks they're ready for that, and looking back, I wasn't ready. I needed to make some leaps and bounds offensively, and I think I had the opportunity to do that and grow through those coaches in junior college and summer ball and things like that. But played there for 2 years, and then we ended up in a super regional at Florida, 2011. We lost in a heartbreaker and in the last inning to go to Omaha, and thought my season was over. I'm out to eat with the seniors. The bus driver at Mississippi State brought us all, just the seniors, out to eat, and we were sitting down at the table. I thought my career is over, and I get a call, and luckily had the opportunity to play some professional baseball with the Detroit Tigers, and got to tell everybody I played everywhere, and I went everywhere and played nowhere. So I was kind of the backup catcher. Actually, one that was really good to me was James McCann. He was kind of in front of me everywhere we went, from low A to high A to double A. I didn't have a car because I was bouncing around more than him, so he would kind of carpool me.
You played with James McCann?
James McCann was in the system at that time. Kurt Casale. There's about 5 catchers in the organization that made it to the big leagues that year. Alex Avila was the big league catcher.
In other words, you had a lot in front of you.
Yeah, and I ended up seeing the writing on the wall on that one.
Yeah,
I was just a free agent, not any money invested in me, and in 1 week I'd be in Florida. The next week I'd be in New York. As one time we went on a one-night road trip in New York, and that day after the game I got called into the manager's office, and I thought I was getting cut. I thought the draft had just happened. I thought And he says, man, you're going to double A. And I get there, I've got one pair of underwear, one shirt. And I had nothing to my name because everything's at my host family's house, and we're on a one-night road trip. So I remember getting there and had to, at that level, once you get to that, you got to pay for your own hotel room. I couldn't afford to go get an apartment because I knew I wasn't going to be there long. And ended up paying $60-something a night, and I wasn't even making $60 a day in double A and eating in the room and walking. Our weight room, it was like a weight room in town that we used. It was like a Planet Fitness or something. I walked like 2 miles to go lift, and we ended up hitting All-Star break there, so I'm stuck there. Everybody's kind of going home and then coming back. But it was all experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's shaped to where we're at today, but really fell in love with the grind of junior college baseball throughout that whole process.
Yeah, that's something that, this is where if you're not a baseball fan, you might not need to listen to the rest of this because this is going to be a nerd session. But I think it's something that people forget with professional sports, especially in football and basketball, where mostly football, if you get drafted out of college, as a quarterback, you're more than likely the starting quarterback or the backup quarterback for an NFL team.
Correct.
You get drafted as a catcher, playing on an SEC team, in a tournament. You were on one of the teams that could have gone to Omaha, and you have to go through the grind of minor league baseball, and you're not different from anybody else. They all have to go through that grind, and I think that's the difference in baseball and other sports is like the grind that you have to go through just to play.
Right.
Not just to be success, just to be able to get grass underneath your cleats.
Right.
I mean, and especially at the catcher position. I mean, you talk about a position where you got to grind every day, and that's the catcher position. So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit more. You were a catcher, what was your day? Were you more focused on, controlling a pitching staff? You'd like to hit, but that was sort of an added. Or were you more balanced? Like, how did you approach that?
Yeah, it was definitely more so just wanting to control a pitching staff. And I think that's where my love for coaching pitching has come in and why I went that route. Coming through Mississippi State and really getting into really how to run a pitching staff, I learned from Butch Thompson, who's now the head coach at Auburn. And me and him, when I was playing, I kind of convinced him that, to start calling pitches. But that came through late nights with film study and him asking him questions and learning how to read hitters, but also, learning how to coach a pitching staff because, the pitching coach is not out there. Your best pitching coach can be your catcher because he just sees things from a different angle. And, my primary goal was to make that pitching staff great. I wasn't the most talented hitter on the team. There's no doubt about it, and I got no shame saying that. So I took pride in making that pitching staff as good as we could because, having the ability to separate offense and defense was huge for me because if I couldn't, then I'd have been very below average at both.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that. And, you talking about that, when you think about, let's bring the MLB into the conversation. Yadi Molina, not a great hitter. I'm a Cubs fan. I watched Yadi Molina. He can do some damage, but he's not the greatest hitter.
Right.
But as a catcher, leading a pitching staff, he's fantastic. And then he leaves, and the Cardinals have the season catcher is a very important position just defensively. That's why hitting's kind of the icing on the cake. So how did you then – there's always that moment where as a player you have to say, okay, it's done,
right?
And I got to move over to something else. What was that moment for you, and where were you?
So I remember I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, and one of the early mornings I got up to eat breakfast, and I remember just being on my computer kind of and it's been a thought in my mind like, hey, is it time to go have a family? Should I keep chasing this dream? And kind of got to double A via one of the catchers got a concussion, and I knew it was going to be short-lived, and went up there and had a lot of success and really had, we had a day game followed by a night game to where I got to catch, I think, 3 games. I ended up going 4 for 10 with 4 doubles and get called in. I'm getting moved down, and it was like, all right, I see the writing on the wall at this point. And it's because, and I get it, it's a business, whoever has the most money invested in them is going to catch. And obviously it worked out. I mean, 5 of those catchers are in the big leagues, and I think 2 to 3 are still today. But just knowing like, hey, is it time to start this career? I'm going to kick that bucket for another 3 or 4 years just chasing my tail. And I think my passion was always in coaching. I thought going through college I want to be a physical therapist, but in the back of my mind it was always like, this is what I want to do. And to be honest, scared of the money situation, right? They don't make no money, they don't do this. And then eventually you look in the mirror and go, there's a ton of people that make this work. And ended up, having a long-time girlfriend at the time who's now my wife. And she was very supportive. It was all my decision to go, it's time to get into this. And if I was going to start, I was going to do it the right way. And I remember, texting Butch Thompson and going, hey, I'd like to be a GA if you have an opening next year. I'm thinking about hanging this up. And he immediately responded, if you're serious about this, let me know. But, I don't want you to end your career, blah, blah, blah. And then end up, coming to peace and terms with it. And, I could have played the rest of that season, but it just really – I got to a place where I got back to my truck. I always say I got back to Florida where my truck was, and they were about to send me back to rookie ball, and it was just like, it's time to go home. And it's fine. It's just the end of the road, and I came to terms with that and ended up being a graduate assistant for a couple years under an incredible coaching staff of John Cohen, who's now the AD at Auburn, Butch Thompson, who's the head coach at Auburn, Nick Mingione, who's the head coach at Kentucky. Jake Wells was there, who just got out of baseball, was recruiting coordinator at UL Lafayette. Will Coggin was there. He's now the recruiting coordinator at Georgia, and then Lane Burrows, who was the head coach at Louisiana Tech now. So it was nice to be groomed by a bunch of great baseball coaches, but even better men, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's really neat. So you become a GA at Auburn, and
it's actually Mississippi State.
Mississippi State
before he left. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My bad. So you become a GA. When did you know, like, where did you fit in? What would you do there as a graduate assistant? And, it's sort of a position that's kind of general, I guess you could say. But what was, like, your role?
Yeah, so my first year as a GA, my primary deal the first couple of years, you're not allowed to coach as a GA at that point in time with their rules. But, I kind of bounced back and forth, pitchers, hitters. I did all the scouting reports, gathered all that information, and it's incredible the amount of information they want at that level. But that was all fun, learning all those things that go on behind the scenes that you don't see as a player, especially in the same program you got to play in. Going, man, these dudes really put their research into a weekend, and all I got to see was the final product and look through a scouting report where, you're working 2 and 3 weeks out ahead trying to get information from other people and watching video. And my first year, throughout that year, I gained more of a passion of wanting to coach pitchers. And I remember that summer, I talked to Butch and I was like, I really, really want to get into pitching. Can we talk to Cohen about me just staying with you? And he was all on board with that. And still continued my second year to help work in the bullpens, kind of ran the bullpen with Greg Dry as well, who's an incredible human, who's now at Auburn still with Butch Thompson. And learned a lot from those two guys, but they let me do some things and learn and grow and, trusted me in the process of making scouting reports because, they watched hitters too, but they had my scouting report before they did it. And they taught me maybe what was wrong or what was right in there and what they saw, which went a whole long way of, learning how to call pitches, learning how to coach a pitching staff and navigate a lineup as a pitching coach and navigate a pitching staff. That went a really long ways of working side by side with him for an entire year.
So have you read the book of Joe, the book Joe Madden wrote, following his,
I never finished it, but I did read it kind of bits and pieces. When I was in pro ball, I read a lot, and then kind of when I got out, it's hard to find, the time.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's one that I definitely need to finish on my list.
Yeah, he talks a lot about how today in baseball, especially, baseball is kind of one of those games where it's so instinctual. I mean, I guess you could say you really cannot plan much out in the game of baseball. You just got to kind of let it come to you. I mean, he talks about how maybe we give a little bit too much information to kids before a game, where they're thinking too much when they get out there and they're in the box, they're on the mound, they're playing first base. How did you balance? Like, did you ever think about that whenever you're helping a pitching staff navigate a team, not giving too much where they're not scared of the guy,
right,
but they know what they need to do?
Right.
How did you balance that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some of those guys that want all that information, right? There's a pitcher that they want to know everything about him, and then there's the other guy that, hey, just let me go pitch to my strengths and do what I do. And I think you have to learn those guys more so than not. I remember as a player, we went through, we played South Carolina, and Christian Walker was on that team. And I'd never forget the quote. And they said, if we don't make this guy the SEC Player of the Week, we're going to be fine this weekend, and had a ton of information on him. Well, he goes 11 for 12, and we made him the National Player of the Week that weekend. So that's one of those learning curves with scouting reports that always sticks out in my head. But with our team now, we don't give a ton of information to our pitchers. I tell them all the time, pitch to your strength first. If you're trying to pitch to somebody's weakness, which is, your weakness as well, or you're not going to be very successful. We kind of keep a lot of that information for ourselves and maybe kind of point out, hey, these are the best runners on the team. These are
Yeah.
the 3 guys that are going to bunt. These are the 3 guys we want to pitch around with an open base. And not maybe tell them, the story of the whole deal, but also give them ownership of their own game is a big piece to what we do. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be with them at the next place. So if we're holding their hand through everything
Yeah.
on the field and they're not technically learning how to coach themselves and do those things, and
doing them a
we're
bit
not-
of a disservice. Yeah.
absolutely, especially once you get to professional baseball, do you want to get better? Well, you better figure it out.
Yeah.
It's up to you, and if you don't, you kind of get left behind. So a lot of that goes into what we do of, you got to learn how to run your own show as well. So giving them ownership, but like teaching them through the process too of, hey, why does this work for you? Why does it not? Hey, try this type situation. So that's ever evolving 100%, but giving them the power and the tools to do that has been a big part of our guys having success and impacting programs at the next level beyond here.
Yeah, that's something that first person I ever heard say that was Ben Zobrist. I was listening to a podcast, and he talked about how, he said too often in sports in general, but he said mostly baseball, we work too much on our weaknesses and not enough on our strengths. And so then you when you look at it logically, you're like, that doesn't really make sense. If I'm great at this, why don't I get to be the best at that?
Right, you're absolutely right.
What was your next step after being a GA?
So after being a GA, I got my first job. Sam Temple at Hines hired me as his pitching coach down there. So grateful for that opportunity. That was actually the year that Jones won the national championship. Had a very talented pitching staff. We actually beat Jones that year one time. So that was a big thing. And obviously the target was on Jones's back that year. Everybody knew they were loaded, and they were loaded with freshmen. Had that opportunity, then had the opportunity that summer. That's when Coach Ostrander left at Christmas. So they never hired another pitching coach. And that summer had the opportunity to come over here and come and visit this place and getting to talk to people through eating lunch. And it was just a special place here, and had that opportunity to be the pitching coach for 3 years. And then, had the opportunity to go be a head coach at Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I was there for 2 years, kind of pretty much during COVID, 2020, 2021.
Well, that was a weird time for sports, wasn't it?
It was, especially, your first head coaching gig. And
I didn't even think about your first head coaching job.
It was kind of, I would say, a blessing in disguise. And, that happened. I had the opportunity to navigate that, and nothing's going to be tougher than navigating, taking everybody's temperature when they walk in the door and making sure they're wearing their mask and organizing things in that way. So that really helped me. But then having the opportunity to come here, 2.5 years ago, I got to kind of correct all my mistakes that I figured I made there and kind of go about things a little bit differently. Not too much different, but also just knowing, hey, I should have done this differently, and had that opportunity to come here. And I guess it was the summer of 21, and have been here since.
So as a head coach at a college program, you do have assistant coaches. Do you consider yourself more of a, I don't know how to say this, like, are you more of a manager or are you more of a coach? Like, are you big involved with the day-to-day actions, or do you like to be more of a decision maker more than a coach? Like, how do you, I guess you say, delegate the obligations of coaching this team?
For sure. So one thing I've tried to do from day one of being a head coach is letting my assistant coaches work, man. And I've had the pleasure to have a bunch of good ones. And at Gulf Coast, Coach Parker, who's here with me now and played here, he's actually still with me, and I've watched him grow as a young 21, 22-year-old and a GA to now our recruiting coordinator, coaching third base and running our offense. And if I'd have told you he could have done that 4 years ago, I'd be crazy. But, man, watching him grow. But I think that's giving him ownership to learn, go give him a position right out the gate and let him go do that. And I'm here to help you at any steps of the way along the lines 100%. But I like to rely on my coaching staff. I can't make every decision. I need help, and having those guys in the dugout to bounce ideas off of, because I'm going to be wrong more times than I'm going to be right probably. You need to have those conversations. How do you see this? How do you think this is going to work out in this matchup? And having guys that have been in baseball for a long time to be able to bounce those ideas off of have been huge for me, and having good guys, So Cody Livingston was with me at Gulf Coast. He actually worked here for like a month, and Nichols stole him. He's a recruiting coordinator at Nichols now, and Coach Parker's been with me all along the way, and it's been awesome getting to hire Coach Page this summer, who played at Pro River, played at Louisiana Tech, and played some high-level baseball. Coached at Pro River last year, got him here full-time to work with infielders. and he was a pitcher too. So having another hand when I'm pulled somewhere else to have someone help with the pitching staff and be able to speak from experience. And the coolest thing about our coaching staff we have now, I think, is we all played junior college in this state, and we all moved on to Division I level. So we can kind of relate a little bit more, I feel like, to the athlete and speak from experience and how we did things when maybe things aren't going as well for those guys.
Yeah, that is an important thing. I talked to some football coaches about that. Like they did what these guys want to do.
Right.
And I bet you that's a big influence, I guess you could say, because you look at, if I'm a second baseman here, I look at you and I go, he made it, and he came from this system. I mean,
Right.
there's a possibility to go to D1. Baseball is a game that I think is misunderstood a lot by people who don't watch it. And it kind of seems like a plug and play. You don't really need chemistry. There's not like basketball where you're making passes to people, or
Right.
football where you kind of have that camaraderie. But baseball's you have to have just as much chemistry in baseball. How do you, with JUCO, you got 2 years. You don't really have an opportunity to build a culture with a specific team. So how do you do that from season to season? Because it's ever changing. I mean, how do you build a culture?
Yeah, it comes through a lot of off the field work and, having relationships. We're recruiting sophomores and juniors in high school right now. So having that relationship for 3 or 4 years does help. But, one thing this team has done a great job of, and that's guys, we have a couple guys that have been in this program for 3 years due to injury or whatever it might be that are our captains at this point, that they've done a great job of kind of holding guys accountable and knowing what culture we have established here and kind of rolling that over to the incoming group. And as soon as they get here, hey, this is how we do things. We don't do things that way. This is kind of the first year where it's like, okay, we don't have to be the bad cops all the time. Those guys are policing themselves, and I've told guys for forever, like, those are the best teams. The teams that they coach themselves, they hold each other accountable to where we can, not have to worry about off the field antics and things like that. Obviously, we're always, on the lookout for those things, but having guys hold each other accountable and tell them what the repercussions of their actions might be or how we go about our day, that's huge to have, because we don't see everything, so in some way, shape, or form. We were in college too. I got it, and I tell our guys that, but there's some absolutes that we go by for sure. But that's really how our culture has changed, and I think you can, and it comes through a lot of work in the fall. We put them through a grind in the fall. There's no doubt about it. A lot of that camaraderie, a lot of that culture is built in the weight room, in the football stadiums, and doing those things, and watching guys. You start respecting guys a lot more when they're going through some hard times, and you're right, in baseball, it's a very individualized team sport where the guy on the bench can't come help you swing the bat while you're in the batter's box. Whereas, football, some guy can help you through a block or do those things.
Yeah.
It's not there. So you are on an island a lot. But just creating that team chemistry is very, very important. And then having each person's trust on the team and everybody being in it for the same mission is kind of what we try to accomplish each and every year. But it can be tough on the 2 years. But I think, some of the best teams we've had, when they come back, they're like, man, I wish this was a 4-year school. There's not many that don't say that, which really means a lot to us as a coaching staff.
Awesome, man. So baseball, another thing, you can get drained during a baseball season. It's like it's a weird draining, because you don't feel like you're exerting yourself physically a lot, but then at some point you just kind of hit a wall. So how do you balance that in season with some guys who come from high school programs, and you're preparing them as well for that D1, and then that, another thing about it too, you going from D1 to professional, that's a lot of games that are added on.
Absolutely.
So how do you in season keep these guys rested and sharp?
Right. That's kind of the balance we always have. And I think every team is different, So even last year to this year, we've gone from 46 to 56 games. So we've added 10 more games in there. We're starting 2 weeks earlier in the season than we ever have. And that's trusting the guys to do what they're supposed to do when nobody's looking, like working hard during the off season while they're home for Christmas and we can't do anything for 4 weeks and those things. But it is a grind, especially going from high school to our junior college level. We have to play doubleheaders a lot. Our conference schedule is all doubleheaders, and it's just different than riding somewhere like you do in high school, playing 1 7-inning game and then getting back on a bus. We're adding 9 more innings to a day.
Yeah, at the time that we record this weekend, you got 4 games in 2 days.
Yep. And I don't know if we've ever done that here since I've been here, and had the opportunity for a team from up north to come down. And I've been talking to them about it all week. You got to be on your nutrition, you got to be on your sleep, you got to be on your hydration from the start, from Wednesday on. We got to be on point, and it comes through. We have our hard days at the beginning of the week, leading up to game day. We kind of, we lay off them a little bit. It's time to recover and get ready to go. But man, especially to the freshmen, this is a different type of grind that you're not used to. You're on the bus for 3 hours, you get off, you play for 6 hours with a 30-minute break in the middle.
Yeah.
Then you're getting home at 1 in the morning, and you're going to go to class the next morning. That's the expectation, and it is tough. And then we try to talk about it all the time. Like it's different. It's more of a mental grind, but we do try to give them breaks in between. We're making sure we get a day off a week at least, and then pretty much another day where we're kind of just not going through the motions, but having a lighter day. Keeping their bodies intact, because being in cleats for 6 and 7 hours a day, that'll wear you out.
Yeah, it will. It will. I feel like I say the word baseball is a game a lot, that phrase a lot in this one, but it's a game where, in football you have to kind of the football mentality where you gotta be the toughest out. Baseball is a game that whenever you play it with kid-like joy, no matter what happens, you're having fun and you're out there. And you'll find that those guys are successful. Adrian Beltre just got voted in first ballot, and that's the way that guy played from day one on. So how do you, keep these guys with that sort of just this is a kid's game. Let's have fun with this. Yes, it can suck sometimes, but let's remember we're playing the game of baseball. I mean, how do you keep that in the locker room?
Yeah. It's tough because those guys are harder on themselves than anybody. And we talk about controlling the roller coaster of the season. You're going to have your ups and downs, but how can you make your worst days still a tribute to helping the team win in some way, shape, or form? The bad part about the doubleheaders, you're having a bad day. You're not going 0 for 3. You're going 0 for 7.
Yeah.
It's a long day. But when you're having your good days, you're 7 for 8, 6 for 7, and you're on cloud 9. But you're going to have those 0 for 8 days. It doesn't matter if you're the best player on the team. But maybe how that day can you get a bunt down? Can you take your 2 walks to help the team win late in the game? But just dealing with trying to stay steady and stay, off the lows of that roller coaster. And even when you're on those highs, try to stay steady and know that it's going to be a roller coaster ride. It's not going to all be pretty, but you got to find a way to grind it out and help your team win each day. And that's really our message of, that it's gonna have up and downs. But let's just try to find a way to keep it in the middle. Keep your cool. Keep your composure. But at the end of before every game, we say a prayer. And the last thing I say to the team is have fun and compete. That's all it's about. If you're not having fun and you're not competing, this isn't for you anymore.
Yeah.
But
and you probably won't be as successful as you can be.
100%. You know, and it's hard because nobody's having fun going 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts.
No. Trust me, I've experienced that quite a lot. So I think I've thought about this a lot. You get kids from high school. Mississippi high school baseball is a big deal. I mean, you got some studs around here that you can recruit. And what does a JUCO baseball practice look like? Like, what do you guys do? You just a random practice. What is the schedule?
So usually we come down, do a team stretch. I think that's one of the most important parts of the day. The guys kind of get together, they're stretching, but they're together and they're talking. We kind of stay away from as coaches, just make sure they're actually doing their stretches and doing what they're supposed to do. But that's the first time of the day they're all together in the same place. And some programs I've been a part of, hitters stretch separately, pitchers stretch separately, and they just never get to have that camaraderie
part of that
together.
Self-policing, I guess.
Exactly. And then we break into some type of segment, whether it's base running, bunting, and while the pitchers are off doing their routines of weighted balls and bands and getting their throwing program in. And then the position players will go throw, and that's all designed to let the pitchers kind of catch up and not be rushed through their throwing programs of getting in and hurry up, go throw so we can get into our team practice. But those pitchers we always are very, very cautious with those guys. And then we get into some individual defense. Individual defense is pretty much when you work with your position coach. That's anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes, depending on the day. Day like today, 2 days before a game, 20 minutes, infielders are going to take ground balls. They're going to turn some double plays, slow rollers. Outfielders today, we worked on sun balls for 20 minutes. Because it's something we actually don't get at our park, which is weird because our field's backwards. So going on the road, we don't have to do it for a while, but just the days you can practice it, we get to practice in the morning, that sun's in a different place where we can actually do those things.
Yeah.
And then we go into a team segment, whether it's first and third defense, whether it's bunt coverages, whether it's rundowns, whether it's picks, whether it's pitchers fielding practice, PFPs. And then we go into either a batting practice segment or simulated scrimmage or inter squad. And then after that, 2 to 3 days a week, we're going lift after that. So, from 1:30 to 6, their time's taken up most days.
Yeah. So in an age where technology is a big deal, do you find kids, especially I'd say the pitching probably more, I'm just guessing, kids know more what they need to do at a younger age earlier than they probably did in the past? Like when you recruit a freshman, I mean, how much do you tamper with his routine?
Right.
Do you find that they know it? That they know their routine more now, or
yeah, now more than ever. now more than ever, they have a routine, and whether that gets tinkered with or not depends on kind of their health more so than anything and how they're doing. But 100%, they are more in tune with mechanics than they've ever been. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to each athlete. And some guys, it's kind of like the information we talked about earlier. You want to give some guys, they deal well with a lot of information. And if I go and tell one pitcher, hey, let's get your arm angle down 4 degrees or do something, and they don't understand it. You got to set it a little different way for those guys. But definitely way more technology out there, I would say, on the pitching side, from spin rate to, all those different things are out there, and they're getting this. They're going to these high-level training facilities at a young age and doing very baseball-specific lifts, and whether they're using tread athletics that's doing remote training during the summer in high school or doing whatever. These things are popping up everywhere in Jackson and Hattiesburg. There's one in Petal. They're training, especially from the pitching side. You are very much more in tune with who you are as a pitcher once you get here than you ever were, which is good and can be bad at times. But it's been nice to be able to talk with a kind of a different lingo with kids nowadays than the lingo we use, and they're very more understanding of hinging and doing the things that they're supposed to do to be successful and generate power and generate velocity than they've ever been before. For sure, they're way more educated than ever.
Yeah. So junior college in Mississippi is really known for football, but JUCO baseball is no joke in Mississippi. So how do you recruit kids from high schools who I'm going to go to Ole Miss or Mississippi State, and how do you sell Jones to a kid like that? Like, this might be junior college, but this is high-level junior college. Like, how do you sell that? How do you sell Jones?
Yeah, it's a process. But one of the lucky things about Mississippi is there's really 3 huge baseball programs at Division I level. You got Mississippi State, you got Ole Miss, and you got Southern Miss. Of course, you have the Delta States and William Carey's, who are also powerhouses. But usually we have the ability to go up against anybody in Mississippi. If they're not going to one of those Power 3, they want to come to junior college. And some of them, you get a few that'll leave state and do those things, but for a majority, they want to come to junior college to get to one of those big 3.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing in recruiting for us is, player development is what we try to hang our hat on. Because at the end of the day, you're coming to junior college to get better, to get to one of those 3. And, 90% of the kids that come through that door in the recruiting process, what's your dream school? Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss. You'll get the LSUs, you'll get something like that, but that's where they want to go. And having guys come in here with 0 Division I offers and then getting 3 and 4 Division I offers and go and play at one of those big 3, that's a huge selling point for us. And I think we've done a good job of developing guys. We got 5 guys that have signed and never had a Division I offer that are now going play in Division I baseball, 3 in the SEC. So it's big to have that. And I think that's one of the most important things. Get them in, and we try to get all the resources we can for player development, because that's what junior college is about. And get them on to bigger and better things.
It's got to be a weird thing to say as a coach, at junior college. I'm getting here to get you out of here.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, that's almost kind of how you have to sell it.
100%.
But that's just the way it is. So, last question, Coach. It's been a pleasure to have you in. But how has Jones impacted your career/life? I mean, just how has it positively impacted you?
Yeah, for sure. So, having come here, when I was here the first time, 2017, had my first child here, but since I got here on campus in 2016, it's a family atmosphere. And from Dr. Smith down to Joel Kane to Chris Robinson, it's never been like very transactional. It's more transformational. And it's exactly the way I want to treat my team of where we're at. It's a family atmosphere. I want to take care of you first off the field. Make sure you're good there. Because taking care of you on the field, that's the easy part, right? Everybody's going to be there. But if we have distractions off the field, we're struggling somewhere, maybe something financially in your family, maybe you have something going on with a girlfriend, whatever those things are, we want to make sure we have that family atmosphere. But, I've had my opportunities to kind of move on, go to Division I, do those things. But this place has always been really, really special to me and my family, of getting the best worlds of I get to come and coach college baseball every day. Never feel like I've worked a day. But also, I get to see my family every night. I'm not in Atlanta for 2 weeks at a time in the summer. We get to stay in the state mainly, but we do reach out a good bit and get out of staters. But I live the best of both worlds of not spending a weekend every other weekend on the road and being gone, because family is the most important thing to me. Whether it's my family, one, and then the Jones family is right there. And it has huge impact of Dr. Smith, Joel Kane, walking my kids on the field after a game.
Yeah.
Maybe a little slower if we lose, but it has had a huge impact and a positive impact on my family in that way.
Well, Coach West, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely glad I can make it. I appreciate it.
Well, you've been listening to Going Off Subject, a Jones College radio and TV production in association with Free State Records. I am your host, Ollie Hammonds. In studio today with us was the great producer, Matt McGuffey, and we'll see you next time.